It's my pleasure and honor to welcome you to today's ADEIL session. Dan Tignano is going to be presenting using a VR headset to create classroom content. And before we begin, I just want to tell you a little bit about our presenter, Dan. Dan is a professor here at Ashford University. He's a lifelong technology enthusiast. He's nicknamed the Electric Brain by his older brothers when he was growing up in Cleveland, Ohio. Dan has been teaching full-time for more than 2 decades overall, having also worked outside of academia in various aspects of the entertainment and advertising industries. He did his undergraduate studies at Oberlin College, majoring in communication studies with a minor in art with a photography emphasis. And he earned a master's in TV and film and a PhD in mass communication from the Newhouse School at Syracuse University, where his dissertation was on virtual reality from a communication perspective. It's my honor and pleasure to welcome you and introduce you to Dan Tignano. Dan?
Thank you, Bill. Thank you very much for the words of welcome, and thank you, everyone, for joining me today for what I hope will be an interesting session on VR and one aspect of VR in education that I'd like to share with you today. I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen. Hopefully this will work. Oh, it wants me to install a Zoom audio device. You know what? Let me share it without. Are you seeing my screen?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay. So that means when we get to that part, you won't hear the audio, but it's not critical for that part.
Okay.
So first of all, you can access this page at tinyurl.com/ADEILVR. I'd also like you to, if you would, take a 2-item survey at some point during the presentation that you can access at tinyurl.com/ADEILVR survey. I'll skip over this next part because Bill's great introduction, and just give you a quick overview of what I'm going to be covering today. I'll be talking a little bit about the history of VR, then standalone VR headsets, which are a more recent development, then moving into VR education, VR in education, starting with some disclaimers and admissions that are probably necessary. And well, I'll give you a rundown of options for recording video in VR, and then we'll very quickly go through a list of VR apps, an incomplete list of VR apps that you may find useful, and some other VR resources before I'll show you the first part of a sample project that I created in VR either at the end of last week or earlier this week. I can't quite remember at this point. And then we'll conclude and turn it over to you for any questions you might have. Now, if you look through this document, you will see, especially when you factor in the time for the videos, that I do not have time to cover all of this. So I really encourage you to go through this on your own. And I'm going to be hitting the highlights, as it were, and reading through the entire document should provide more information. So I'm going to focus on the pictures and not the text in this Adobe Spark page that I put together for this presentation. Now, I like to think that the inspiration for VR is actually pretty ancient and goes back to the fact that we dream and that we have an imagination. For some people, a very visual imagination. And I don't think it's a stretch to say that thousands of years ago, many people had wonderful dreams that they wished they could go back and experience again. And that's really where the inspiration for VR may come from. Now, in terms of the technology that we have today, probably the oldest root technology of VR is stereoscopic photography, and you'll see the stereo image on the upper left here. my grandparents had a collection of these glass stereoscope slides and this beautiful cabinet that my mother told me it just disappeared at some point, but she was sure it was worth a lot of money to an antique dealer. But being able to take photographs is already capturing reality, but using two lenses to capture two images like your eye would see to capture an image in 3 dimensions was one step further toward virtual reality. Sensorama, the next item here, is a kind of an arcade experience where you would watch a film or a video on a screen, but you'd be sitting on a chair that could vibrate and shake and buzz, and there would be fans blowing in your face and sometimes releasing scents so that it would integrate with what you're watching to make it a more immersive viewing experience. And gimmicks that showed up in movie theaters around the time that television was competing with movie theaters are other examples of this type of trying to create a more immersive experience. This weird picture of the guy with this thing on his face, that's the first head-mounted display. Both of these go back to the 50s and 60s. In the bottom 2 images on the left, we have Sega VR. On the right, we have Nintendo Virtual Boy. The Virtual Boy was the first VR device that I owned. And the 2 things I remember about it was that it was a black and red picture, red lines on a black background, and that it gave you headaches. Virtual reality really only became consumer technology within the last decade. A big part of that was Google Cardboard, which some of you may have heard of, released in 2014. You could get, in some cases for free, in other cases for $1 or $2, a fold-up cardboard headset that you would put your smartphone inside. You'd load the Google Cardboard app onto it, and you could experience VR. I don't know if any of you have tried the original Google VR, so Google Cardboard rather, but there are nicer versions of it that you can buy, such as this one, and I'll be leaning out of screen to grab stuff. This is a smartphone VR device. I'm looking for the release button. Oh, here. Nope. Anyway, it opens up and you put your smartphone in it. There's a couple earphones that are built in, and I'm just not seeing how to open it. But you can. Oh, it slides out. You put the phone in this way. I've got quite a few of these in my collection. And those were the next ones. They were standalone in that you could use them without anything else, but they weren't VR devices. They were smartphone holders, really. The first standalone VR device probably was the DevKit 1 from Oculus. That was a Kickstarter in 2012 that was funded. And within 2 years, less than 2 years after they put the DevKit 1 on Kickstarter, Oculus was acquired by Facebook, who owns Oculus now to this day. And we're really going to be talking about Oculus for the rest of this presentation. The first Facebook-owned Oculus product released was the Oculus Go. That was released in late 2017. This is an Oculus Go, and this is the single controller. You see it doesn't open up. The screens are built in. There's a couple lenses inside, and when you wear it, you look like this. So you get that privacy to use it without feeling embarrassed. So that's the Oculus Go. That was released in 2017. Shortly after I sent the proposal in to ADEIL for this session, Facebook announced that they were discontinuing the Oculus Go, but of course you can still buy them. You may still be able to find new in box on eBay or used ones. And I'll be getting into some reasons why you might prefer the Oculus Go. The next Oculus product released was the Oculus Quest, which can't really see on Zoom. It's a heavier product. It's got 4 cameras in here, so it's aware of your surroundings. And you get two of these controllers, which have more buttons and more controls on them. That's the Oculus Quest. It was released a little over a year ago and has since been discontinued. And just this past Tuesday, the Oculus Quest 2 was released. And this is the Oculus Quest 2. And it's interesting that it looks a lot more like the Oculus Go. But again, there are 4 cameras built in. The controller is very similar to the Oculus Quest controller. But it's a better screen, it's newer technology, and it's a less expensive product. In fact, you can buy the Oculus Quest 2 for roughly the same price that you would have bought the Oculus Go for when it first came out. So one important distinction between the Go line and the Quest line is that Oculus Go is a 3 degree of freedom headset, which means you can turn your head on all 3 axes, and the image you see, your view of the virtual world, will change appropriately. But as soon as you start moving in your X, Y, and Z axis, you'll see that it's like a big sphere is attached to your head, and it moves with you, and the picture moves with you. Whereas the Oculus Quest allows you to move translationally on 3 axes, and you move through that world, making it a much more lifelike experience, and it's called a 6 degree of freedom headset. So those are the differences. That's the differences between the Go and the Quest. And you can, again, I had them here, so the pictures are in the presentation. Oculus Quest, because you can move through a space, you need to set up a safe area so you don't walk into walls and trip over furniture. And this video, which you can play on your own time, shows you how that works, setting up the play area. Now, let's move into really the heart of the presentation, which is VR and education. I have a few disclaimers and admissions to start off with. It's important to understand that the intent of this session is not to rely on students having VR headsets. I don't think that we can count on students going out and buying a $300 VR headset because we want to do some immersive experience with them. Maybe you're in a situation where you can support that, but probably you aren't. So we're focused on how you, as an educator, can use these devices to create content, typically videos, that your students can watch on any device. So that's disclaimer 1. A couple admissions. I would say, and I would admit, that pretty much everything that I'm going to show you, the ways that you could put together this content, you'd be able to find either existing material or you'd be able to put it together another way. So I wouldn't want anyone to go out, run out and buy a VR headset just because of what I'm showing you in this session. I think you have to have other reasons to want to have a VR headset. I think there are a lot of them, but I don't think that creating content for your classroom alone is a justification unless you can find one at a very attractive price, which maybe you could. This is not the only way to create this kind of material, but it's a fun way. It, in some cases, will be more engaging, more interesting for your students, but there are other ways to get this kind of content. Now, a second admission, and a bigger one, is that within the last few weeks, Facebook has retired the Oculus login and required you to log in to your Oculus device with your Facebook ID. This has, I participate in a Oculus in education group on Facebook. There's a link further down if you're interested in that group. And the general consensus there is that this is shutting Oculus out of the education market, that no school would be equipping a lab with Oculus Quest if every student has to log in with a Facebook account. There's just too many issues with that. Now, having said that, it's very early on, and Facebook may adapt to that reality and come up with an alternate method. There was a news article within the past week that Congress doesn't like this requirement, and they may legislationally force a change in it. I did get a contact at Facebook in their education division, but was unable to get in touch with her, so I couldn't get any direct word from them. But this is a real issue. However, for you as an individual using these headsets to create content, it's not a deal breaker. If you're okay with it, you could also create a second Facebook account that's separate from your main one to log into the Oculus. But I've read a few accounts of people having trouble with that and basically breaking their brand new VR headsets, at least for the time being. Now, a really important aspect of this presentation is how to record video in VR. Fortunately, it's pretty easy. Once you know how, it's very easy. You have two options, well, really three, but two easy options for getting video out of your Oculus and onto a file that you can edit or share. First is streaming live to Facebook. Again, Facebook, and Facebook comes into play a lot with this. You can stream live to Facebook, but you can set the privacy so that only you can see it. And when you're done doing whatever streaming you've done, there'll be a recording of it saved to your Facebook page, to your, not the page that everyone sees, but your Facebook account view page. The second way is to record video directly onto the camera roll of the VR device, just like with a smartphone. In which case the quality will be better than streaming live. The downside of recording this way is that you cannot use a microphone. So if you want to be talking about what you're showing in VR, you will have to add that later. I don't mind doing that because I'm used to editing videos. It's pretty easy for me to do. And that's what I did in the project I'll show you at the end. But if you want to be narrating as you go along and recording that as part of video, then you have to stream to Facebook. Then you can just Google, how do I download my own videos from Facebook to my computer? It's like a 3-step process. It's not very hard. That's what I did with every video pretty much that you're seeing in this presentation. This last video here is a side-by-side comparison, Go versus Quest, streaming versus recording. It won't really show the difference sharing it this way on Zoom, so I would recommend watching this video on your own if you want to see the difference. And the Oculus Quest 2 will have even better video quality than the Oculus Quest. So I didn't have that until a couple days ago, and I did not have time to revise this. You also have the option to tether your headset to a computer, and then it acts like an external drive. You can download the video files that way. You can also stream your Oculus device to an Oculus app on a phone or a tablet. I have not tried that, but my expectation is the quality would be roughly equivalent to Facebook, capturing a Facebook stream. So recording video, please go through this if this is something you want to try out, and make sure you know how to do it, because everything else will depend on your being able to capture video and move it to a tablet or a computer or some other device. Now, Oculus apps for education. In the Oculus Go App Store, they have a category for educational apps, and there's about 300 apps there, so there's quite a bit. There's much less for the Oculus Quest. One, it's a newer platform, and two, Facebook is imposing more quality restrictions on what goes into the Quest App Store. So it's a more of a barrier to having your application sold there. There is a handful of Go apps that can run natively on the Quest. And there's a link just a bit lower that will show that. Now, I will very quickly go through these apps. I'm only going to show you one or two of them in the video. because there's a lot of them, and I really want to focus less on the apps and more about the potential here. An Anne Frank house tour. This is, I believe, was made with high quality pictures that were taken with a 360-degree 3D camera. And you can basically go through all the rooms in the annex of the Anne Frank house. It's heavily annotated with quotes from her diary. And there's also a miniature model that you can look at that shows where everything is in relation to everything else. It's a free app. It's a really great demonstration of what VR can do. And certainly if you were to get a VR headset, this is available for both the Quest and the Go. It's two different versions, so the Quest version is a little bit better. Art Plunge. You'll notice some of the app names have a star. The star indicates this is in the Go store, but it will run in a Quest. So if you want to buy it, you have to buy it through the Go store, which you can do. Facebook will sell you any of these apps, even if you don't own a headset. They will take your money. So going into the Go store, if you own a Quest, is not a problem. So you can buy Art Plunge in the Go store. It will then show up, at least in your Quest. The Quest 2, the operating system, is being updated by Facebook. And my hope is that these apps will become available at some point. They're not as of day 3 with the Quest 2. Art Plunge is an art gallery that has 5 paintings in it, and you can actually go into them. It's another one of these wow factor VR things. I am going to show you this video because I think it's maybe more impressive than the other ones. And hopefully it will load, and let's take a quick look. So the gallery apparently is on the moon. I don't know why. Here's the first painting. When you click on the painting, when you point at the painting with your controller and click on it, this happens. You're now inside the painting. If you listen, I don't think the video is coming through, but you can hear like horses, hooves on the street. You look behind you, there's the portal that you came through, and you can actually walk into the painting. If you walk over through the windows, it's a little problematic. They didn't intend you to do that. And when you walk through the table, you actually walk through the table. But it's an impressive experience. I don't know how you use it in class, aside from maybe talking about the historical aspects of the painting, but it will create more interest than just a slide of that painting. So I won't be showing most of them to you, but that one I wanted to show you. Athens in VR is a 3D model of ancient Athens that you can move through. Many of these things are annotated, so there are things that you can click on and text will come up. I recommend against capturing text for these videos because it won't be readable. And it's best to just focus on the visuals that are provided and provide the explanation through a narration or audio track that you record later. So this is another Go that runs on the Quest. First day on set, 2 stars means only available for the Go platform. I really like this app because, as you heard, my master's is in TV film. I've taught video production, I've taught film production, and in a teaching remote situation, your ability to show students how a film set works is very limited. So this app lets you go behind the scenes on a film set. This person showing you around is explaining the different jobs people have and how things work. It's very interesting. It's a very interesting app and provides something that I haven't really found a way to do any other way aside from going onto a film set. So that's why I included it here, although it is Go only. The next 2 apps are, they're game-like, Gadgeteer and Gravity Lab. What they have in common is that they simulate interactions of real physical objects and are kind of like a virtual lab environment, although the virtual lab environment for Gravity Lab is in space. Gravity Lab adds a layer that you could never have in a classroom. Like you could do the Gadgeteer stuff, you could build all that stuff if you had the parts in a classroom situation. Gravity Lab has gravity manipulation. So you can create two bowling balls and you can attach a gravity altering device to one of them so that the pull of gravity is different. You can send them through the same course that you set up and see how they react differently. So you can actually manipulate gravity in Gravity Lab. So obviously very useful for maybe a physics class or something like that. Human Anatomy VR, very similar to these anatomy apps that you see on the tablets, except that you can use the controllers to grab, the plates off the skull and take them off, rotate things, zoom in, zoom out. You can do a lot of the same stuff with the tablet app, but you might find it's a little bit easier. It's certainly a different experience in VR. Masterworks Journey Through History has 4 locations of historical interest where you get kind of an all-access pass to that site. So the video I captured, you're actually up with the heads on Mount Rushmore. You also have an Indian temple, pre-Aztec Indian temple, ancient capital of Thailand and Colorado cliff dwellings, which you can create these kind of immersive, unusual perspective videos in. Getting back to, we talked about messing with atoms before, Mel Chemistry Lessons VR. My kids subscribe to the Mel Science, the little kits that come once a month with chemistry experiments, and they love them. But the VR app lets you do a bunch of lab type experiments that might be too dangerous or too expensive or too tricky to do at home, but also lets you go in and manipulate atoms directly and different types of bonds. And in the video I showed chemistry is not my field, but I showed my attempt to build CO2 and H2O into carbonic acid. So you can watch that and laugh at it. It's a free app, but aside from a few free unlocked modules, you have to either buy the whole app for $20 or unlock different modules at a lower price per module. Mission ISS is a 3D model of the interior of the International Space Station that you can move through. A word of warning about this: this is the app that everyone says induces motion sickness. I've used it, and it takes a lot of fortitude and practice. And first time use it for a minute, then 2 minutes, then 5 minutes. Recording this video is the longest span of time I've spent on board the space station here. Multiverse is kind of like a science museum in VR. It has different rooms and exhibits, and you can go in and you can record things. You may also run into, it's a shared virtual space, so you may run into people there. It's only happened to be once or twice. National Geographic Explorer. This is very deep experiences at Machu Picchu and in Antarctica, where you play the role of a National Geographic photographer who's been assigned to get photographs of certain things. In the meantime, you're learning all about these environments. There's also a kind of like a National Geographic office that you leave from. It's a very well-designed VR app and worth checking out. Our solar system is like a VR orrery, a model of the solar system, not to scale. So you find planetarium apps. I think it's called Home Skies is the one that I've seen advertised. Titans of Space is a very polished version of this, which you see down here. So you can do a lot of stuff where you're going into space, recording videos of, like, again, you can find these videos, but if you have a specific thing, like if you really want to show that for a hexagonal storm in the clouds of Saturn and focus on that, maybe your best way to do it is through an app like this. Wander is a VR interface for Google Street View. So anything that's on Google Street View, you can go there. It supports social interaction, so you can actually lead tours within Wander. You'll see I used it for the project I'll be showing you very shortly. Wonders of the World is built around the seven ancient wonders, or seven wonders of the ancient world, with a kind of artistic rendering of the environment around each of them and some of the people who live there. You can interact with them. You can see the landmark. It's kind of unusual in that it's not very photorealistic, but it's also unusual in that it simulates residents of that time and place. XR Square is another Go-only app. It is a virtual lecture hall. And I don't know for what reason, I tried several times to upload the video from my headset to Facebook, and it just never shows up. If you want to see it, you can click on the link that I provided, or you can check back here. I'll keep trying to add that video. But it really is like a traditional lecture hall, and you have buttons. You can load images and PDFs to share with people who are attending through VR. So this is sort of breaks my rule about not assuming that students have a headset, but I wanted to include it because it is the closest thing to a traditional lecture hall. SideQuest is a website that lets you do a run around the Oculus Quest App Store and load not approved apps onto your Oculus device. You have to switch on developer mode. It's a little more complicated, but there is a category for educational apps on SideQuest, unlike the Quest App Store, and I've linked to it here. CoSpaces is a website that supports development of VR and AR content using a system very much like Scratch coding. So it's modular bit blocks of code that you snap together. And you can take a look at that. Just, again, something that teachers would want to be aware of. Finally, I want to talk about social apps for VR. Again, this breaks my rule about not assuming that students have headsets, but it's a great way to interact with other educators who are into VR, share ideas. AltSpace VR has a recurring Educators in VR event. I think it's once a week on Tuesday or Thursday night, I forget. Facebook Horizon, also called Oculus Horizon, it's a new app in beta. Both AltSpace and Horizon let you create worlds. So I wasn't able to find it again, but I saw a guy who created an outdoor museum in Horizon of NASA booster rockets that you could go and you could record a video there if you could find it again. And I've been looking for, I looked at the beginning of this, like maybe I could put on my headset and present from VR, but there have been breakthroughs in that or more developments in that since I checked. And there are options here that may make that possible. I don't think it's particularly compelling because if everyone's wearing a headset, then maybe it's worth doing. But for one person to put on a headset and join a meeting that way is probably a little weird. VTime is, I believe, it's the last app I'm going to share. It's kind of a special case because this is the one that lets you go in on VR and students can go in from a phone or a tablet. The limitation is 4 people at a time in a virtual space. So this teacher made this video of using it for a storytelling class. Watch the video because VTime does not allow casting from VTime. And I was not able to actually even do recording. So I don't know how this guy did it, but I couldn't, but he did. It's definitely worth checking out. If you want to experience VR a little bit without getting a VR headset, this is probably as close as you can get. And if you have Google Cardboard, it'll work with Google Cardboard. Now, there are many, many more apps that are out there that could be used to create content like what I'm about to show you. I created this in Wander and the Anne Frank app. I'm not going to play the whole thing. I'll just play a couple minutes. I turned my volume up all the way, and I hope you'll be able to hear.
Welcome to Amsterdam, the capital city of the Netherlands. As you wander the picturesque streets and notice the many canal boats throughout the city, you may pass Amsterdam's most famous building. Here it is now. Behind this green door, you will find one of the most well-known residences of the 20th century, the Anne Frank house. Here Anne Frank and her family, along with the Van Pels family, hid from the Nazis, while Anne wrote her diary, a diary that would one day be read by millions. But if you want to go in, you can't enter here. Instead, you need to go in the entrance up ahead, and around the corner. This unassuming landing hides a secret. Behind the hinged bookcase, a door that leads to the annex where the Frank and Van Pels families lived. This is the room that Anne's parents, Otto and Edith Frank, shared with Anne's older sister, Margot.
Okay, so I'll stop there, and you can watch the whole thing. It's about 6 minutes long. That gets me through the content part. I just want to share at the bottom of this, you'll find, if you want to connect with me in social VR, my VTime name is Professor Dan, and Altspace VR, I'm at Dantini VR1. In Facebook Horizon and in Oculus, I'm Dr. Dan T, no spaces, and no capital letters. So my final thoughts and advice, wrapping this up. As of today, the only Oculus headset you can buy new is the Quest 2, and it starts at $299, which is a little bit less than an entry-level iPad. That alone could make it worth a try. You would get more out of the Quest 2 by participating in a Facebook or Reddit group or something where you're interacting with other people. I recommend the Facebook group that focuses on Oculus and education. And my final thought is that VR headset is not a magical content machine for educators. It's just another tool that you may find useful. I wouldn't get a VR headset, as I said before, just for this. But if you wanted to get one anyway, plan on using it for this. If you were on the fence, maybe this will take you the rest of the way there. There's a lot of fun things you can do for your own enjoyment and education, even exercise. There's some great exercise apps for the Oculus Quest. So I'll stop there. I will stop sharing my screen, and I'd be happy to take any questions.